This show and its accompanying article, Agents of Revolution, is from the archive at windowsontheworld.net and has never been published on YouTube, only the trailer was uploaded. However, it is important information and applies even more now as when it was published. The template never changes. The globalists need the anti-globalists to implement the policies of the globalists, and the template steered direct action, fake theatre, protest groups from Extinction Rebellion to their offspring Just Stop Oil, and the current gatekeepers taking focus away from the Gaza genocide are no different. So, to introduce you to the concept, Defend Our Juries is yet another fake grassroots exercise in herding the gullible middle classes, whilst the others have their Zio distraction fake far right, something for everyone, or so they think. It's called the System of Moods. So let's go to this Defend Our Juries website. Their main statement is, jurors have an absolute right to acquit a defendant according to their conscience. If we look at what they mean by conscience in their terms, it seems to mean an emotional argument. They are full on with the globalist warming and the restriction, control and taxation objectives of the 2030 UN goals. Their arguments on this subject are all emotional and not at all factual. So, let's look at it from the perspective of a psychological steering mechanism, which is actually what it is. In a court, emotional response from juries is what convicts many innocent people. These people may be exposing flaws and criminals working for and being protected by the system. I've seen this happen, you probably have too. So true conscience comes into play after the facts are known. However, in most jury trials, the police, CPS and prosecution team withhold important defence evidence. As far back as 2017, the withholding of important defence evidence was reported by HMCTS. Evidence important enough to convince a jury of innocence was found to be absent in over 50% of examined cases, and it is now much worse. Let's look at the term the public interest. It means that it is not in the interest of the public to know that, for instance, doctors kill their patients, or people in local government embezzle money, or protected assets are abusers, fraudsters, liars or thieves. False allegations by institutional assets are always a problem. Evidence which should be in the public interest is bad for morale and against the common good. The national security or the financial and social control of the population through implanting beliefs is what is important. The stability and security of the nation. The common good then being for the protection of narratives which will get the public repeating such statements as it's a conspiracy theory, or our justice system is envied around the world, or if something was that corrupt, somebody would have said something by now. And other logical fallacies which we hear on a daily basis by the media and the public. A theatrical performance and a bit of crying from a prosecution witness backed up by an over-the-top victim impact statement has seen many an innocent person being put behind bars. Yes, I've seen it happening in court. Maybe you have too. A barrister will call this a very compelling witness. Not, of course, that they are telling the truth, but they are manipulating the gullible on the jury by their performance. It is usually only 2 of the jury at most out of the 12 that don't fall for it, so a conviction is pretty much guaranteed. Lucy Letby being the worst and most appalling miscarriage of justice in recent times. I argue that this would not have happened in a so-called third world country. The UK justice system is appallingly stacked against those who actually tell the truth, and especially when it is to the detriment of liars who are covering for the system. As far back as 2017, I was a witness in a Crown Court case, and the person who was accused was vilified in the press and stated as being on the run when they were not, and were fully in compliance with bail conditions. Of course, Crown Court cases then took 2 years to come to trial. It's even longer now, as has been reported in the press. This person was put on Crime Stoppers and all the regional publications of the Live Group, which is owned by Reach PLC, plus fake far-right websites which demonise those in trouble with the police who may look Asian or Middle Eastern. Of course, there are these websites and groups for everyone, so they don't leave anyone out in the racial mix. The solicitor asked the Kent Police, do you have any policy in place that deals with possible prejudice in relation to jury trials, as potential jurors may have seen the website in question? The response from Kent Police was, go to kentpolice.co.uk. and that their relentless pursuit policy deemed the person to be on the run as they had missed a case management hearing. So in this case, by conscience, they are meaning emotional response. So if you want to see more on that and that information, go to Kent Police Court Crime Farming at windowsontheworld.net, and it will show how Crime Stoppers was brought down by one email from myself to Lord Ashcroft in 2017, which in effect meant that nobody on Most Wanted could have actually been wanted, because if they were wanted, they would have been on the Most Wanted police website. This ended up with Crime Stoppers being totally reorganised, people sacked at Kent Police, big story. But things are much worse now. So in this case, by conscience, they are meaning emotional response. This is the manipulation technique of the recent pantomime protesters. They have no real knowledge of what they are supposedly opposing. For instance, throwing soup at a Van Gogh painting is bound to get the trivia-orientated media on the case straight away. Bit of theatre. But ask them about the real facts behind their actions and there will not be any. Having tried to debate with indoctrinated tools like Extinction Rebellion, it is clear they know nothing of any facts, just hyperbole, ridiculous claims and false arguments. Logical fallacies rule their world. So, as we see the .orgs taking over public opinion are gatekeeping the real issues. Shouldn't the public be able to see through this by now? Well, the answer is no, and things have got worse in the past 5 years, not better. And shows like this, Agents of Revolution, and all of those shows which are linked to those articles at windowsontheworld.net are here to balance the books. Welcome to Windows on the World, and tonight we're going to be looking at the agents of change who are leading the fake revolution. Yes, it is actually happening. The revolutionary spirit is taken account of. The revolutionary spirit is harnessed and steered. The radical revolutionary groups which control all opposition to globalism are run by the revolutionary by numbers school of direct action. It's a template form of protest. Of course, we've covered this so much over the years. I wrote an article several years ago called COVID Protest Social Engineers. I have made films about how these groups are infiltrated, groups such as Occupy. And of course, now it's got even more refined. So it doesn't matter whether you are for the globalists or you think you're protesting against them. All narratives are being controlled. Let me give you an example. I suppose many of you post things in Telegram groups. Well, Telegram, of course, is merely an arm of GCHQ. Well, how do I know this? Because anything of real importance that gets put into these groups, anything which would actually be of use, of real use, is of course deleted. I'll give you an example. This group is called Freedom to Chat on Messenger. And somebody has made a note of the fact that these fake revolutionaries are now going to council meetings and ruining every chance the public will have of engagement with the council by causing disruption. Somebody has put, watch and think before you help the globalists implement more disastrous changes around you, thanks to some Marxist revolutionaries sabotaging the councils. Then, my latest article, which features a video, and it's called How to Oppose LTNs, that's low traffic neighbourhoods in case you didn't know, how to oppose LTNs and UK councils. I have put the shows we did on the zoning of Canterbury and Oxford. Of course, Oxford's going to start to be zoned from August next year. All that is in the article, along with a video on how to legally oppose the low traffic neighbourhoods. Well, I'm sure that everyone out there would think that would be entirely welcome in a group called Freedom to Chat, which is meant to be opposing globalism, but no. It says here, Protectron says your message has been deleted. So what I've found is that my article and our video, which is in that article, are being deleted and blocked from all of these groups. Now, why would that happen? Why would that happen if these groups were really about taking on these councils and getting a resolution? Well, why do you think? Because they're all controlled and steered. So tonight's show, we're going to go over some of the material that I've covered in the past, but mainly new material on how this latest stage of the fake revolution is unfolding and why nobody should be a part of it. Of course, the absurd dramas of the past couple of years through COVID have achieved absolutely nothing. So why do people keep wanting to go round in the same circles? That's the question. Okay, well, a recent disruptor hijacked a council meeting in Oxford, and it was attended by those opposing this zoning of Oxford into these 6 zones. Was it 5? Canterbury's 5, Oxford is 6, I think. It's all in that article on the homepage at Windows on the World, how to oppose LTNs and UK councils. The video's also there. However, what happened was, at this meeting where the public were having a chance to confront the local council, was a revolutionary Marxist got up and started causing a fuss, stole the whole show, and of course got into the papers, and it was videoed, and everyone thinks this is a big revolutionary act. No, it's not. It merely enables the council to close the meetings down and engage in no further dialogue, which is of course the whole object of these revolutionary groups. Because the revolutionary Marxist groups were of course created by the globalists, and they of course support all of the plans of the globalists. So this asset appeared to get up and be a freedom fighter, and then guess what? The assembled protest group cheered her on. And a few days later, the Morning Star, the paper for revolutionary communists and extreme left-wing ideologists, ran an article on this revolutionary disruptor, and she quoted from Marx and other communist revolutionaries and talked about what they all talk about, social change. But they never really tell you what that change is going to be. It hides behind worthy community effort and action. The methods used are always easy to spot though. The globalist-backed anti-globalists work for all the globalist goals, whether it is the fools gluing themselves to roads, throwing super paintings, or disrupting council meetings. These actions are theatre, nothing more, and they are there to stop public engagement. They are there for no other reason. They are, of course, backed by change agents in all areas of controlled dissent, and they prevent any useful opposition. So I hope this is making sense to you. The fact that I've put out a video which gives you the real solution to low traffic neighbourhoods and how to engage with these councils, and that video is blocked on Facebook and your favourite groups on Telegram. So why is that? I'm not saying that all groups are blocking it. Maybe there are groups that aren't run by change agents, but in my experience, all groups in the UK are entirely controlled. So the UK has been the most infiltrated with these new forms of steering through protest, mainly through easy indoctrination, gullibility and ignorance of the population. The legally binding targets through the Environment Act 2021 and the new Environment Improvement Plan, which is being legally binding to Agenda 2030, comes in early next year. And these policies put into law many of the things which you are opposing. So in other words, what people are actually trying to oppose now is all written down in these binding agreements. Remember that if you look up Agenda 2030, it will still say on mainstream media that Agenda 2030 is non-binding. That's absolutely and utterly untrue, and has been since at least 2009, because people in America were putting out videos showing that the legislation was being brought in under the Green Agenda all over America. And of course, Britain and the Climate Change Act are synonymous, and what is coming in the UK is more draconian than in any other country, and its carbon neutral stance is more extreme than any other country in the world. So, sleeping on these matters has meant that more than a few are realising that they are going to not only be asset stripped but locked down and controlled in a way they used to dismiss as a conspiracy theory, which is quite a good thing because, as I said, I think the other day, I was thinking about this. Most people are uniformitarians. They're not into catastrophe. Well, the Earth is a kind of long-term series of catastrophes. So we have to get used to the fact that this latest imposition is going to be a catastrophe for a lot of the human race. So in the meantime, they are using sound bites and actions given to them by those they appear to oppose. And that is, of course, no good. That is exactly what's happening. And this fork in the road means that there are those that understand this and those that don't. These opposition groups are all run on the same lines and with the same activities, which are nothing more than distraction and theatre. Those that oppose these Soros-backed groups, for instance, also enable the same causes and work towards the same overall goals as those that are gluing themselves to roads. This system of controlled opposition is very thorough in selecting its chosen sound bites and its allowed voices of dissent. Over the past couple of years, I've seen these allowed voices of dissent, and one thing they all have in common is they absolutely and utterly discredit any cause for which they are fronting, in the eyes of not only the public, but all media. Of course, some of them are supported by the more idiotic alternative media, which is merely now a platform for repetition and no solutions. It wasn't always like this, but it has been completely and utterly dumbed down. Well, this system of controlled opposition is very thorough, as I've said, and it does select those who are suitable. Often these people are police assets who are put into these groups. They are Marxist revolutionary change agents, or they are basically mentored as change agents. And these are called social entrepreneurs. It's all in an article I wrote many years ago called Big Society Change Agents. Nothing's actually changed in their template whatsoever. Their template is exactly the same as it was 10 to 15 years ago. And of course, a lot of the revolutionary Marxist ideologies and templates are all of those that you've seen used by these agitation groups. So it doesn't matter whether it's Antifa or these middle-aged women with placards making lots of noise at town halls. It's all the same stuff. It means no resolution. It means that you are steered into the inevitable dead end. And those that stir up the public into the hijacking of meetings and storming public events are exactly what the Sustainable Development Goals are all about. It's called direct action. And it's the template for all protest. Here's your banner, here's your sound bites, make a noise, it's not going to make any difference. Engaging dissent for a useful outcome to enable those who you are meant to be opposing. Very, very simple. It makes the smokescreen easier to impose on everybody this mass consensus and giving those who should be held accountable an easy way out. Literally, they can just shut down meetings as they are doing and disappear forever from public scrutiny. What these people you are opposing locally really want is for you to start threatening them. And I've seen these idiots on platforms like Facebook over the last week and they are saying there are buildings, let's take them back. They are all now being collectivized into action, which is going to be a catastrophe for anyone who wants a useful outcome. So the radical Marxists are the best friend of the globalists. In fact, the globalists created them. These offspring of the Global Action Plan are, of course, planted everywhere. All union leaders who have any public profile are from their school of Marxist globalism. Absolutely every single one of them. The fake left is a creation of the World Revolutionary Movement. The World Revolutionary Movement, of course, that brought you the Bolsheviks and killed at least 60 million Russians, probably 100 million. These are the same people who are behind the same disruption that you are being led into under the new communitarian community engagement direct action system. If there is to be anything achieved, this system of infiltration has to be observed, and more importantly, it has to be dealt with. Whenever you see it, there is a choice. You can either engage, disengage, or expose it. So, if you're going to do anything, you need to work in small groups. I've always said this. And you need to be quite clever about what you're doing. I've covered this in many shows in the past, but what I can't really believe is that the same things happens over and over again. And one of the reasons why people don't know much about this is because I'm the only person in the UK that reports on it, and I'm the most shadow banned show, and indeed absolutely ostracized by all the fake alternative media in the UK. So that tells you everything you need to know, really. And the problem with exposing it is that this has already been taken into account, of course. The groups have dragons who will attack if you are against the cause. They'll say things, why are you against the cause? Why are you here? Why are you being so negative? You're a shill, etc., etc. The tactics of radical Marxists are a big part of the activist playbook. Of course, it all revolves around Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals in the communitarian system. And you can download that at windowsontheworld.net on the free books page. But the point is that the tactics used in these things are so childishly simple, they are merely theatre for people with little intelligence. So, there's no reason to get sucked into that, is there? Of course, then there are the don't be negative types, another programmed drone of the new communitarian system, the new age idiots, who are basically too busy on reflecting on themselves and referring to their indoctrination through the new age to actually be of any use whatsoever. And I've done so much on that, I don't really want to get into it tonight. But any of these types will say, don't be so negative, you're dividing the group. Well, it all works, doesn't it? You see, they work as one. It's communitarianism. So there you have the unity of the Marxist radical and the New Age acceptance of anything as long as it's not negative or indeed factual. Because, of course, facts can be very uncomfortable. With such a simple set of rules, I always thought that this system would get exposed, but it never was, and it still is in operation. And that's what's going to be happening over the next several months. You're going to get these people claiming false victories. They're going to be whipping the public up into storms of indignation and led into a cul-de-sac. And then all of these implementations will be put in. And once they're put in, they're not coming out again. So that leads us on to another idea. Are the public actually able, and have they got enough guts to start taking this stuff apart, literally? Well, that'll be interesting. Let's see. So yes, if you go to the latest show section at Windows on the World, I want to give you a few links, because if you're new to any of this, you might find it extremely helpful. There's one called a depopulation plan, and this was actually a talk I gave to a group who are now obviously disempowered, as most other groups are, because they listen to this sort of stuff They'll listen to it, they'll nod their heads, but it doesn't sink in because they will get distracted onto the next cause, the next direct action, protest, the next day out, and they'll forget all about it. Because when you learn, you have to have a certain amount of repetition and you have to be able to spot things and see what's going on. I'm going to have a quick break actually, and then I'll come back with some more articles. So grab your pen and I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Yes, see you in about, let me see, yes, 2 minutes. Probably 2 minutes from now, I should think. Welcome back to Windows on the World. Just before the break, I was going to give you a few links. So I did mention the depopulation plan. Take a look at that. It will also give you some useful quotes. There's also a talk that I did in Glastonbury at the symposium a couple of years ago. It's called The Plan to Rule the World, which is a very good way of getting up to date with what's going on at the moment. And yes, Archons of Community. That has many, many links in that article. And there's links to communitarianism, there's links to how the whole thing works, there's links to COVID protest social engineers, which has many other links. All of this stuff is very easily laid out. And it's really so easy to read, and it explains everything, which is why I've kept it in this particular simple style, because there's nothing complicated about what's going on, nothing complicated whatsoever. It's absolutely simple the way this stuff works, especially this form of direct action, this sort of crap theatre that's taken over everything. But I still get people asking me what's wrong with gatekeeping Pied Pipers of the agenda like Russell Brand, and it still astonishes me that they can listen to my shows and still listen to that. So there is a cognitive dissonance with people, and there is a real problem with discrimination about data and fact and intention. It's very difficult to even get past that level of naivety. So what happens when everything has been said and they still don't get it? Well, I suppose it should be interesting at least. But the World Revolutionary Movement captures the directionless and disables those who have one. So if you have a direction, the World Revolutionary Movement will disable it and send it into a cul-de-sac. This is basically what has happened since I have been looking into this, which has been a long time actually. It must be nearly 20 years now. But of course there's nothing new here. These techniques were used by the Bolsheviks. These techniques have been used by the World Revolutionary Movement for the whole of the century. It's all based on deception and lies, and audacity, of course. But it only takes one loud-mouthed direct action actor to steer a large group. And that is the main thing. I've seen that time and time again. There are always more of them as well than you think, because what I've noticed, and what is easy to see, is the amount of infiltration. It simply means that you can't have a public group that isn't infiltrated unless you are constantly vigilant and you have one aim, and that aim is not subverted, because what these people are doing is just subversion. They're subverting what the true intention is, but it's been painted as a victory, and it's been painted as being along the lines of what the people want. Very, very simple, nothing to it. But these groups have many agents and dragons assigned to them. Dragons are people who are a bit of a step up the ladder of agitation, and they will openly confront you, they will cause trouble, they will surround you, and they will cause a group to fracture. And I've seen this many, many times before, and these people do exist, and they really are called dragons. They have them in Extinction Rebellion. In fact, the dragons at the centre of Extinction Rebellion actually threatened some hippie activist who questioned them openly. They openly threatened him, and that can be found in Extinction Rebellion, the facts at windowsontheworld.net. In fact, if you go back into the archive, you will find so much stuff. Even I go there to learn, because obviously you can't retain all of this stuff. Things are moving so fast now. But the template remains the same. So if you're planning anything, stay off the radar until you're ready to do it, as all known public groups are steered. And this has, of course, been covered in many of our shows, plus the tactics used. So it's all in there. There are many videos and articles on this very important subject. Check out all the articles linked to the Archons of Community. Do go into that article. And remember that anyone with a solution is the enemy. So if you've got a real solution, you will be able to go absolutely nowhere in these groups. So they are made, and you will be made to be the enemy of all if you have a solution. The same as I was, I have been, and still am, because I will openly confront these agitators, these change agents, and of course, what I said at the beginning of this show, my stuff is now banned from these Telegram groups. So the solution, which is a real solution, which we put into that video, how to oppose low traffic neighbourhoods, is banned. What does that tell you? Remember that anyone with a solution is the enemy of these Marxist revolutionaries or the New Age revolutionaries. They're all the same. It doesn't matter. They're all controlled by the same power. The revolutionary spirit is taken into account. The revolutionary spirit is harnessed and steered. It has been taken into account and is absorbed and neutralized if it is outside the cause of direct action. In other words, pointless theatre. Something is either agreed upon or imposed. Basically, the fake consensus and the results of these actions are neither. So, yes, these articles are extremely useful and they contain a lot of information. For instance, in Archons of Community, we get into the idea of seemingly unstructured resistance and how it has been truly taken over. So anyone sucked in and spat out by it only has themselves to blame. The idea of these groups is to misdirect energy and to take the remedy away. This can be done by discrediting it through making the real solution look ridiculous. That's a very common tactic. The final destruction of the last hopes of a few is well underway. And remember, the new system of communitarianism absorbs everything, including all protest, all organised community action, all media and all narratives. So you're listening to probably the only show that is outside that. And I'm going to keep on ridiculing this, and I'm going to keep on reporting it, and I'm going to keep on giving solutions and simple and direct answers to what's going on, because this is the whole purpose of the shows, and I love doing it. I love the research. this is something that interests me. I'm not out there to basically join in with the conspiracy circus. In fact, I find it absolutely laughable now. And remember, the whole idea of the new system is to absorb everything. The whole system of moods has to be brought under one roof. The allowed voice of dissent is everywhere. It is allowed to be everywhere because it goes nowhere. And remember that talk that I did a lot of work on from 1969, Dr. Richard Day, who worked for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as it was known then, Planned Parenthood, worked for the Rockefellers too. And he said in an off-the-cuff lecture, it was called The Order of New Barbarians, which you can find at winnersontheworld.net, the whole transcript and all of the tapes. This is what Dr. Richard Day said in 1969 as he was trying to basically wake up a group of students to what was coming in. He said, some of you will think I am talking about communism. What I am talking about is much bigger than communism. Yes, it's called sustainable development. It's much bigger than communism. And there are communitarian repeaters and snitches all mentored into the hive mind as global citizens, unthinking and compliant, yet also subversive. If you are resistant to the mind virus, you must beware of shepherds who are appointed to lead you unwittingly into the hands of the global action plan of communitarianism and sustainable development. And that goes for any participation group like community assemblies. We go all into that in that article, and it's called Archons of Community. So about 2013, I wrote an article called Big Society Change Agents. You can see the updated version from 2015 at winnersontheworld.net, and it's in that article on the homepage, how to oppose low traffic neighbourhoods and oppose councils. How to oppose low traffic neighbourhoods and councils. This is what's just been banned from your favourite Telegram groups. So read it and listen to the video. It's very, very simple, just bullet points, and that's what I've always put out, the solutions. Okay, so basically the beginnings of this article, Big Society Change Agents, go into exactly what is happening now, and it takes you through how exactly it has worked. And the reason this is important is because this article goes back nearly 10 years. There are tons of links in there. It's not something actually that I would have brought people's attention to much, but because the template is so obvious and so simple and hasn't changed, it's very worth having a look, because it will get you up to speed on how this works, because nothing has changed in the implementation. What these people are doing is not clever. It's extremely simple. So I hope that was useful. I'm making this a short show, and please look at those references, those articles, and I will be back during the week. Keep sending me in your emails, and also, yes, take a look into the massive archive at winnersontheworld.net and help us out on Patreon or PayPal if you can for the Chickpea Fund. So I'll see you soon on Windows on the World, and thanks for all of the information that I've received, and do keep sending it in.